Okay, so here we are today. We're continuing to work with fractions. Yay, fractions. Woo. So as we get into fractions, right, we're going to be like thinking about, oh boy, like what this idea of reading, like writing and creating them based on what we get, right? So this is all kind of work that's going to build on some of the stuff we've already been looking at and ideas of like a fractional set. Keep using that, right? Fractional parts, as well as some of those key vocabulary words of numerator and denominator. There's a lot on this screen. So let's just dive in and kind of play around with that. So let's kind of start with this creation part, because then that can help us kind of build and go from there. So well, let's just go ahead and take a fraction. We're just going to make one up here. Why don't I take 2/3, right? So if you remember again, like reading and writing this, right? This says 2/3, or it could say 2 out of 3, or 3 number, however, right? 2 out of 3. It also says, and I'm just again placing this out there, we'll get there later about it, but it can also just say, it says 2 divided by 3. And we're not going to really get into that, but I mean, that is what it says, because again, you read from top to bottom, and because this will come up in some later stuff. So, you know, plant seeds, start thinking about it. But we got 2/3, or we got 2 out of 3. Okay, so let's think about what that means, because now let's create it. Let's create what this model looks like, what this fraction is, and let's create it as a part. Let's create it as a fractional part, right? So we start off with that bottom number, right? Remember that very bottom number, that's the key to all fractions. So every time we have a fraction, we really want to pay attention to the denominator. This is the bottom number, and it tells us like what our whole, how many parts we have. Actually, I think that's a good way of thinking, like how many parts we have. So if we think about our whole, and I draw that out, wow, no, I don't. Come on, that was crooked. Do a better job there. Okay, we draw that out, right? Okay. Now, this denominator tells us we have this thing cut into 3 parts. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to partition it, or cut it, right? Or divide it. These are all terms that we can think of into 3 parts. You can see I made 1 part, 2 parts, and 3 parts. Right? There we go. And then we want to move over and look at what our numerator says. Oh, I'm out of space. Numerator. A numerator, right? What does our numerator say? Our numerator is that top number that says, well, how many parts are shaded, right? There's the total number of parts, that's the denominator, and there's 3. And the numerator says, well, 2 of them are shaded. So that's what this would look like. 2 out of 3 is modeled this way. And then we could also do this as a fractional set, which means then the denominator tells me how many things I have, and then like 2 of them would be similar. So I have to think about that in advance, right? The sets, you kind of have to visualize in advance. So let's just do, I'm going to do 3 triangles, but 2 of them will be the same color, like this, right? So that's a fractional set. This is also 2/3, or 2 out of 3, because 2 triangles are orange out of 3 total triangles. So that's how we can create that based on fractions. So again, you know, now we have a messy screen. So let's just kind of keep practicing with some of the other things to bring some clarity to this. Let's talk about here. Okay, so there we go. There's our fraction. So our fraction says to us 2 out of 6, or 2/6, right? 2 out of 6, or 2/6, or 2 divided by 6. We'll talk about it later. But we have 2/6 here, 2 out of 6. All right. Well, let's start with the denominator, right? The denominator. It's so key we get these words down. So the denominator, again, is like, what is the total? What are the total amount of pieces or parts? Because we're going to do like a fractional part here. So again, I've said, like, I think the rectangle is very helpful. Rectangles and squares are really helpful. Drawing your model a different way, and we can draw it a different way. Like I could draw this as a triangle. I could. I just have to then mean, based on this, I have to create and partition this into 6 equal parts. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that kind of works, right? But then there's always this worry of like, are these pieces the exact same size? So that's why I just want to keep going back to why I keep using rectangles and squares, because they're a lot easier to partition, right? So our denominator says, hey, we need 6 equal parts. So we'll talk later. You'll see in this video, another video we do when we talk about equivalent fractions, like what denominators are friendly with each other, because you can kind of learn how to partition things, and we'll get there. Don't worry. But there I've done that. I've created 6 equal parts. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So those are the equal parts that I have. And then the numerator, right? The numerator tells us how many we have. How many of the parts in this case will be shaded pink? Well, that's what the numerator says. It says we got to shade in 2. So let's do that. 1 and 2. So that's how you would create that fraction. 2 out of 6, 2, 6 looks just like this. And again, we could also create a set. Whoa, boy. We could create a set, which means I just need 6 of something and 2 of them will be different. So I'm going to stick with colors because right now that's the easiest way. So 1, 2, 3, 4 triangles, 5, 6. So there's 6 total triangles, and 2 out of 6 are orange, right? Okay, so let's just kind of keep playing with it and see what we can do. Let's do another one. Actually, let's do a couple. We'll do A. It's one of those like pause it and try it if you want. So we're going to do 1/2, do 3/4. And why don't you do this as fractional parts? I think that's the most common. Actually, let's do another one. Let's do 3/3. We're gonna do 4. Oh, wow, slow down. 7/8. Okay, cool. So go ahead and give these a go. Like draw these out as models, and let's, you're coming back from the pausing yourself, and let's play around with this. Let's start to build these fractional parts, right? So for each one, I need a model. So just gonna draw a model for each one, right? 1/2 equals 3/3 equals 7/8 equals 3/4 equals, okay? So there's like my model. Now let's use that numerator and denominator knowledge to help us. Denominator, how many total pieces I cut my hole into? It says 2. So there we have it. I have 1 piece and I have 2 pieces, right? See that where that works? 2 pieces. And then my numerator says, well, how much are you going to shade in? Well, I'm going to shade in 1 of these. So there's 1/2. That works. Okay. All right. Next one. Denominator. How many parts we need to cut it into? Well, let's take our hole and cut it into 4 because it says 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many are we going to shade? Well, that's what the numerator tells us. So let's shade in 3. 1, 2, 3. Cool. All right. Let's try out C over here. It says 3/3. So again, denominator, how many parts do we partition or cut this into? How many equal parts? I haven't used that enough. We got to make sure that's true. That's something that I haven't really expressed. It always has to be equal parts. So we're going to partition into 3 equal parts. And it takes practice. You might have to erase them and try them again. You want them to look pretty close. And then the numerator says, well, how many do we shade in? Well, we shade in 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. So that's actually 3/3 right there. It's all of it. It's the whole thing. All right, I shaded all of it in. That's what 3/3 looks like. Okay, 7/8. Okay, so here's that thing. And I'll kind of touch on it. If I know how to make 4s, I know how to make 8s, right? Watch this. I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, right? There's my 4. And then I'm gonna take half of everything. Whoop, whoop. And then look, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces. Okay, and there'll be more on that. Don't worry. That was just a quick one. So the denominator said 8 pieces, and then 7 says we got the numerator. The numerator says let's shade in 7 of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there is 7/8, right? So that's what all of this means. This is the work that we're doing when we think about fractions. So again, keep in mind we have fractional parts and we have fractional sets. And then we just need to be thinking about those keywords, right? What does the numerator tell us? It's the top number that says how many I'm shaded or how many are like similar out of a set. And then I have a denominator. And that tells me the total, right? This is the total, and this is how many I have. So just one last one. Let's just do 2/3, right? So if that was a part, I'll do that up here. Here's my 1/2. I'm going to cut it into 3 parts, and I'm going to shade in 2. That's what the numerator says. And then if this is a set, I'm going to create 3 things. So I'm going to say 3, 3, and 6, right? So there's 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3 numbers, and 2 of them are the number 3, right? So this is also 2/3. So someone said, what's the fraction of the number 3 out of this set? Well, 2 out of 3 numbers are the number 3. That was a lot. Okay, so that's how we work through this. We're going to continue to practice. Don't worry, fractions. It's all practice. There's going to be more coming along, so we just keep working on it. And as always, I thank you for your hard work. I thank you for being here, and we will see you so soon because there is so much more coming.